All right, I think we're ready for Mr. John Luby to step up to the stage. How about you take a seat right there, grab that microphone and have a seat right there, because I have a stool, John, but then you would be sitting in a chair like down here, so we'll just take both take a seat up here. Yeah, have a seat right there on that chair. You might have to untangle it there. Hey, let's give John Luby a hand, all right? That was a really weak round of applause there, John. What'd you do? I don't know. Yeah, there's only 10 of us. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not fair. That's not fair. So John was willing to join me up here today. Like we said, we're in a series called Jesus in the 12 Steps. We're weaving together stories mostly from the life of Jesus, but really from the whole Bible, and weaving in with wisdom from Alcoholics Anonymous, really the 12 steps. And we said throughout we're going to feature stories, wisdom from people who've actually worked the program. And John is willing to step up and do that. He shared with us before, so I appreciate you being able to share your story. So this week, John's going to give us a little wisdom from step 3, which we're going to talk about. What is step 3? But he's also going to shed light on a little bit on step 1 and step 2. And next week, we're going to have Caleb Lane in the house for steps 4 and 5. So the next few weeks, we're going to put 2 steps together. If you're like, are we going to do this for 12 weeks? Not exactly, more like 9. So, John, so could you just start off with just kind of recap, if you'd be willing, very briefly, just kind of your story, like just kind of let's do 60 seconds or less. Like, so how many years do you have now? How many?
Yeah, so I had 4 years on December 7th.
4 years. Get that mic up to your mouth, all right, John? Yeah. So 4 years. Yeah, 60 seconds or less. What led up to 4 years? Like what's that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's been a long road for me to get to that point. You know, a lot of attempts to try to stay sober, and you know, failed. Wasn't ready to fully commit to what I knew the real solution was with the program and Jesus and everything like that. And you know, it was just failed attempts until I finally got to a point where I was finally ready to put in the work, and was finally successful to this point. But you know, it's very fragile. I know if I stop doing what I need to be doing, I can go right back to where I was very fast. So it's taken what it's taken to get to this point. But you know, I'm thankful I'm here today. And you know, just briefly, I don't even want to go into that. It's a little, I don't know who's out there, so I'm not even going to go into that.
Okay, that's fine. Good. Maybe it's a solid choice. Yeah. What I wanted to focus on, anyhow, I did want folks to just know a little bit about you. And hey, man, we celebrate 4 years. So John is one of kind of our core members and leaders of a recovery church. So we have a meeting on Wednesday nights. Anybody out there, you need help, you need community, you need a free catered meal, show up Wednesday night, 6:30 right here. I wanted to back up a little bit. So step 1 is basically the admitting defeat step. You know, kind of confess that our lives have become unmanageable, so to speak. Why does that have to be step 1, admitting defeat?
Yeah, so, you know, I talked a little about it in my little storytelling thing or whatever, but, you know, for me, my failed attempts were for so long basically anything other than Jesus, to fill that God-sized hole, as we say, in the rooms. You know, whether that was being obsessed with like working out, or being a workaholic, obsessed with how much money I was making, lusting, whatever the case may be. You know, I tried every possible way to get rid of these demons away from Jesus. And, you know, I'm thankful that I had people in my life, you know, my parents, family, And then, when I came in the rooms and into church and everything, I had people that set an example for me that really showed me it was possible to get rid of those demons and be happy with Jesus as the centerpiece, So until that idea was fully smashed that I could, use other things other than Jesus as the centerpiece, I was never ready to fully dive in. Ross talked about the half measures availed us nothing. That's a line from one of our readings, and that was the definition of what I did for a long time, were half measures. I always thought I could do this on the side and really do what I wanted to do still. But that's just not how it works for me. If I'm not all in, I'm not in at all, basically. So,
yeah, something you said to me on the phone was, I remember this when we talked about this a few weeks ago. You said that half measures availed us nothing, not that half measures availed us something. And that's part of the great illusion, right? You think that, we all think that with what we got going on, that because we're managing okay, we have our periods where we're managing okay with whatever our kind of demons are. We tell ourselves, yeah, I'm managing it all right. But for you, you realize that you really weren't, right? So step 3 is, I don't have it in front of me, so if anybody wants to correct me out there, by all means do it. But basically, we resolve to turn our life and our will over to the care of God as we understood Him, right? That about right? All right. So step 1 is kind of the admitting defeat step. Step 2 is we came to belief that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And then step 3 is we turned our life and will over to the care of God. Do you remember a time, John, or do you remember a moment when like that clicked? When turning your life and will over was like, wow, this is what that really means, and here's what it feels like.
Yeah, not necessarily a moment. And first, I just want to say, I hope everyone is receptive to what Ross has been talking about. If I was somebody on the outside, I might dismiss it. I might not have an issue with alcohol or drug addiction or whatever. But this is everyday living that we're talking about here. So I hope everybody keeps an open mind because it has really changed my life. But yeah, as far as a single moment in time where I kind of recognized it, not really. I think it talks about in our big book, or maybe I learned this over time, but the way it's happened for me has kind of been piecemeal, where it just happens over time, and I can't really pinpoint a second where it happened, but looking back, I realized that it did,
Something that really clicked with me when I was reading some of the stuff, one thing that connected with what you just said, it says the key to opening the door is willingness. And then if you can just get the door open, you find out over time that you can keep pushing it further and further open if you can just start with willingness. And another thing that you said kind of jogged my memory is that's connected with my life. I've had moments where I thought I was turning my life and will over to the care of God. I was pretty sure of it. But even recently, I've been journaling about how I realize that when I think I'm praying like to turn my will and life over, I'm really like trying to get a result from God. I still got like my hand on the wheel, like trying to steer it where I want it to go. And so it's a completely different kind of surrender that when you do it, you feel it. So here's my last question for John. We're going to look at the story of Jonah today, and his story looks to me much like that of an addict. But it's also, like you said, it's every human story. It's not just about addiction. It's every human story. After he catches a glimpse of God's path for his life, he literally flees as quickly as he can in the opposite direction. We're going to see that. It's fast. He hears this vision of what he's supposed to do. He's like, oh, okay, I'm out of here. He doesn't like take a moment to go, let me pray about it. Let me sleep on this. He's out. He chooses flight initially. When we think about fight or flight, he chooses flight initially. His story ends in fight. you maybe don't remember this, but the story of Jonah ends with Jonah being mad at God, frustrated. Because basically he's led Jonah to face his enemies and to be in conversation with them. So he's mad. So it starts in flight, ends in fight. It's a story like of human struggle with his own individual stuff, but also like stuff his ancestors have been dealing with. So there's like his stuff, and then there's stuff of the people who came before him. It's like a big struggle. And it ends with frustration. It ends with confusion. So my question to you, John, when he does step 3, turns his life and will over to the care of God, it ends in some frustration and confusion. Why is it worth it? Why in the heck would you do it?
Well, this turning our will and our life over isn't something that, I just do one time. It's something I have to do every day. And it's difficult sometimes, I feel conviction about a lot of things that I didn't before. And like Ross said, with those convictions, it's tough sometimes. But what makes it worth it, first and foremost for me is like salvation and everything, and just being able to get the weight off of my shoulders basically and realize that somebody else is in control is a relieving feeling for me. For so long I tried to fix, manage, and control everything, and it's stressful, and I did a terrible job because left to my own devices, I can't be successful. I have to have a higher power to lean on, which is God for me. And it's just so much better to know He is in control because He's all knowing and all powerful. And, it's just a feeling that lets me be happy, joyous, and free, peaceful, serene, knowing He's got my back. And I felt alone for a long time because of the way I acted and everything. And to know I have somebody that's on my side, it's just a great feeling. But it's not easy. It's not easy, Like I said, these convictions, I feel like I fall short a lot of the time. Because I hold myself to a kind of higher standard now that I've been exposed to the righteous way or whatever. And I fall short a lot. So it's kind of easy to get discouraged, but, I got to pick myself back up, do the best I can, and know that I'm forgiven, just try to rectify these mistakes the best that I can. And, the small groups have been a huge thing for me too. Being able to get connected to a group of people that hold me accountable, that I can get vulnerable with. So yeah, if you have the opportunity, which I know you do in this church, to get in a small group, I highly advise doing that. I've seen huge strides in that area. So it is worth it. If anybody hasn't given it a chance, it is worth it.
I didn't even tell John to plug the small group, so good work, man. Appreciate that.
You've brainwashed me to do
it. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Such good stuff. All right, you want to put that microphone back and have a seat. Let's give him another round of applause, a hearty hand for John. We'll have that again next week. The whole inspiration of this series was that I just sat with these folks, and I realized like they had wisdom that I'd never heard, and that was like challenging my journey. It made me realize there were a lot of things that I didn't have figured out, that their wisdom has. I just told some people this, and from a couple of our meetings, like, I've been working the steps with a couple of things going on in my life, and it has provided spiritual awakening that I haven't had in years. So as John says, like, okay, maybe you're out there and you're like, I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm not an addict. You can work these steps. You can do this if you're interested and you're like, I don't know where to start. Send me an email, ross@heavenearthchurch.org. And obviously, if you're struggling with addiction or anything like that, we definitely want to help with that too. So here's what I want to do. I just want to have a few more minutes where we take kind of what John has shared with us and just use the story of Jonah to think a little bit more deeply about it. Is that all right? We'll take maybe 15 more minutes, something like that. And I'm telling you, if you've heard the story of Jonah, you might be like, oh, I know this story. I get it. I'm telling you, this week, I dug into this story again, and I was shocked at how it spoke to me and how it can help us in a journey of transformation and faith with God. So let's pause and pray, and then we'll dig into that a little more. God, grant us your wisdom as we try to engage this story, as we try to wrestle with these words and gather wisdom, gather the help we need to live as we are designed, as we are destined to live. Guide us in the name of Jesus. Amen. Really quick, I want to define something before we get going. We're going to be using the word will a lot. Step 3 is turning our life and will over to the care of God, to the care of Christ, to put it in our language. By will, I'm not going to use like big theological words that you get from going to seminary. By will, I don't mean like a plan that's been all mapped out already. Sometimes when we think of God's will, we think of it that way, like it means like how God has mapped everything out already. Like, well, I just need to submit to God's will. And sometimes we think that means like God has everything planned out already, That's not necessarily what I mean. I mean more will equals wishes. Like God's wishes for the world, for our lives, like turning our wishes, our lives over to the care of God's wishes, so to speak, God's desires, so that the desires of our hearts are shaped by God's heart, which naturally means that the ship, if the wind of God's wishes gets into our sails, that means the ship is going to end up in the place where God knows is best. Makes sense, right? Think of it that way. Turning our life and will over to the care of God is like asking that God's wind gets into our sails, right? So, Jonah, starting right off the bat. Man, this story doesn't waste any time. It's crazy. If you want to follow along, I'm in chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Look how fast things go. Within 3 verses, we cover a lot of ground. Listen to this. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. That was fast, wasn't it? Recap. The Lord shows up to him and says, like, hey, I want you to go be kind of a witness to a group of people who are up to some serious wickedness. Jonah, like I said a minute ago with John, Jonah doesn't go, we don't have a picture of Jonah like in his house at night journaling, like, okay, pro and con list. If I do it, this. If I don't. No, he's like, yeah, what is it you want to do? All right, see ya. He gets on a ship that is truly bound opposite direction. Nineveh is the capital of Assyria. That was the big bad enemy of Jonah's people. The Assyrians would eventually conquer the northern part of Israel in 722. My iPad thinks I said, hey Siri, because I said Assyria. I don't need anything, Siri. Thank you, though. It's very kind of you. 722, the Assyrians would conquer the northern kingdom. They did evil stuff that is really gruesome. I'm not going to really describe here because, like John said, it might be some kiddos online and stuff. But God is like, hey, Jonah, can you go where they are? Go to their capital city and go talk with them? Already we have a story where God is inviting a human being to confront his worst enemies. And so we know, too, that if we're going to turn our life and will over to the care of God, we're going to confront our biggest, baddest enemies. Everybody good with that? You want to do that? Everybody want to do that this week? You want to confront your biggest, baddest enemies? Yeah? That's where this story goes. You've got Jonah confronting his enemies right at the start and saying, no thanks, God, I'm out on that. So what I want to show you really quick, though, is how this story moves and kind of connects with the 12 steps. So you already have Jonah running the other way. And verse 4, it says, the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. Go back to what we talked about insanity last week. We think of insanity as like this stigma word, like a mental health word, like you're crazy. But really, sometimes when we think about it, with some of my addictions, my first behavior when I start to jump into that cycle of addiction is truly insane. We told a story last week about a guy named Jim from the Big Book who put whiskey in his milk. He was like sober for a while, and he was like, man, if I put whiskey in my milk, it's no big deal, right? That's what our insanity sounds like. Think about Jonah right here. Think about his insanity. He actually thinks the God who created the universe, if he just gets in a ship and heads out somewhere, God can't see him, hear him, observe his thoughts? Is that insanity or what? Man, if I just board this ship and get going fast, I will get out of God's orbit and I won't have to worry about this anymore. You ever do that? You ever, as the Joker says in Batman, you ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? You think you're dancing with the devil and nobody can see it. And God's like, oh, hey, hi. What are you doing there? Right? And what's going to happen, what you're going to see here in a minute, what I'm going to show you is the moment of desperation that comes from Jonah's fleeing. I've heard some people talk about in our meetings, they've used this weird phrase. You ready for it? The gift of desperation. Do you think of desperation as a gift? Do you want to be desperate like in the next hour? Because it's going to be a gift, right? God, make me desperate because that would be the gift I need today. What you're going to see is the gift of desperation that happens in this story, right? And you're going to see how different people handle it. You're going to see how we can identify with these people. But here's my question that it's going to be at the end of our time together. I'm going to pose it to you now. When we get to the moment of desperation, when we get there, and it's a desperation that we're partly responsible for. Sometimes we experience desperation we didn't have anything to do with, right? But especially when we get to that desperation that we have some part in it. We might cry out to God and say, God, help! Do something! And then we experience it sometimes. You have this breakthrough, right? And all of a sudden we worship God maybe in a new way. We make sacrifices. We make these changes. We have new respect for God. Here's my question. When the desperation subsides, does your worship of God, your change, your promises, do they endure? When you get out of the desperation, does the connection that you experience with God in the desperation endure? Or do you get through the desperation and go, okay, God, thanks. I appreciate it. Now, I can't wait to get back to my life. God, would you like to come along as a friend? My life is pretty good. You should watch. Do we do that? I do. All the time happened to me this week. It did. I found myself on Friday like feeling miserable in my desperation. Cried out to God for help. God helped. I wonder what will happen next week. When the desperation gets over with, will my newfound worship of God endure? Or will I say, hey, thanks, God, appreciate it. I'm going to get back to my life now. What about you? When things get better, will you endure in turning your life and will over to the care of God? Or will you do half measures? It's a question for you. All right, listen here. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. Here comes the desperation. You ready? Watch how people respond. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. Who's your God, man? Cry out to him. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Cry out to him. Desperation. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. It's desperation time. But Jonah had gone below the deck where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. Don't we do that in our desperation too? We just pull the covers up over our head and try to sleep it out. Right? Sleep through it. Not going to happen in this story. The captain went to him and said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. All of a sudden, the captain cares about Jonah's God. It's like, all hands on deck. Get to praying, dude. We need help. Let's go. Then the sailors said to each other, come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity. This story is supposed to be a little bit funny, by the way. You don't think of the Bible that way. There's a little bit of comedy to this. Like literally, these guys are like, let's throw some lots around. It's basically a situation where, kind of like a game of dice. It's like, oh, the dice landed next to Caleb. Caleb, this is your fault. They're trying to figure out who's responsible for this. Let's cast lots and see who it falls on. Desperation. You'll do crazy stuff in desperation. Crazy. These guys are like, legitimately though, insanity. That's what we do, right? They cast lots. This time they actually hit it right. The lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, tell us who is responsible for us, tell us who is responsible for making all this trouble for us. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? Where's your country? From what people are you? Now, we're going to talk a little more about this in a minute. Think about it. Insanity. Now, they want to know who this guy is? Don't you think that might have been a thing to do before they let him onto the boat and set out onto the tumultuous seas? Heck no, man. They're in some pattern of reckless behavior. I don't know if they're drunken sailors or what. They're in some pattern of recklessness. We're like, hey, come on, man. Jump on board. We're going to Tarshish. And then desperation happens. All of a sudden they get smart. Who are you? I've heard people who've worked the program talk about like when you're trying to step into transformation, sometimes you got to change your people, places, and things. For people say you got to change your playground and your playmates. These sailors don't care about their people, places, and things initially. They're like, come on, man, let's go. We're going to have a good time. Now they're like, who are you? What country are you from? What work do you do? Now they care about the people, the company they keep. Right? He answered, Jonah did, I am a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. This terrified them, and they asked, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. He already told them. And they're like, oh, cool, man. That sounds like a good time. Come on, we're doing it too. Now they care. Man, when we're in our patterns of recklessness, we miss all the signs. Miss them all. But we're still managing it. Oh man, we tell ourselves, it was a bad night last night, but I'm back to normal today. I'm going to take a week off from my recklessness, get everything manageable again, and then I'll be good. And then I'll talk to God at some point. Jonah says, this sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, what should we do to make the sea calm down for us? Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied. I'm going to argue that this is the moment, this is the step 3 moment for Jonah. It could legitimately be a suicide attempt. I'm not joking about that. There are too many people in our world right now in their desperation who are wrestling with that choice. You know, I respond to those calls for the fire department, Johnson County Sheriff, right? You have people you know who have been there. So we need to be listening to people in their cries of desperation and not flee. That's part of our role, right? Jonah might be doing that here. I think, based on what we hear the story, this is step 3 for Jonah. This is Jonah saying, it's time for me to turn my life and will over to the care of God. Toss me into the sea. I can't run anymore. Throw me overboard. Whatever happens, happens. No more half measures for me. Full measure, throw me in. Pick me up and throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Instead, I put you to sleep. Say instead. All right, come on, instead. Man, all the times we get these signs in our recklessness, and we have our instead moment. It's like Ross was in the midst of his recklessness. He got a clear sign from God that it was time to do an about face. Instead, Ross kept going along in his recklessness and telling himself it was manageable. That's what the narrator of my life sounds like, I guess. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, please, Lord, do not, see it? The gift of desperation hits them. Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased. Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. That's where my question came from, right there. If in your desperation you reach out to God and find yourself with newfound worship and sacrifice and promise, will that newfound worship and sacrifice and promise endure once you've made it through the desperation? Or will God go back to being your hobby with you steering your life? Or as John talked about, will you daily wake up with this realization like, I got to turn my life and will over to the care of God, moment to moment, day to day, if I am to recover from this recklessness? We think that, and you've about made it through today, so thanks for tuning in. We always think in the Bible, we should only pay attention to the story, to the people whose name is on the story. Like, this story is about Jonah. We talked about this, I think it was on January 2nd. How in the Bible, you need to pay attention to the minor characters. It's the sailors, too, we need to pay attention to, right? They're going through their step 1 and step 2 and step 3. They're not quick to admit defeat. Their boat's about to be capsized. Instead, they rowed harder. Their boat is about to be at the bottom of the sea, and they're like, row harder, man. Instead of going, this is unmanageable. The only way I'm going to make it to the shore is if I yield to a power that is greater than myself and turn my life and will over to the care of that power. Then they do. They throw the guy overboard, hey, let's give them some credit. They don't want to be guilty of an innocent man's blood. They say that. The sea calms down. Will their devotion endure? I don't know. We never hear from them again. We hear from Jonah, though. He says that prayer that I read at the beginning. Go read it. Jonah chapter 2. That's my challenge for you this week. Read Jonah chapter 2 every day. I'm going to check back in with you online. Read Jonah chapter 2 every day. And just see what it does for you. Journal about it. Make it a part of your step 3. The other thing that you can do is add in what's called the Serenity Prayer. You can Google that, the Serenity Prayer. Add that to your week. Jonah chapter 2, the Serenity Prayer. Jonah turns his life and will over to the care of God. The good news is this: every time we do that, every time. Big, profound sentence I'm about to say. Our lives get better. They don't get easier necessarily. They don't get simpler. Some ways they get harder. Our lives do. But if and when we turn our life and will over to the care of God, our lives get way, way, way better. Every time that we say, God, just get your wind into my sails today, I pray, our lives get better. They don't get easier necessarily. Don't get simpler. Jonah prays that prayer. It's beautiful. He ends up in Nineveh preaching to these guys who conquer his people and do gruesome and nasty things, and it leaves Jonah in the place at the end like saying, God, this is wrong, man, that you sent me here. You should not have mercy for these people. And God his response back to him is like, hey, who are you, bud? His life does not get easier. It does not get simpler. In many ways, it gets harder. I asked John, is it worth it? And John said, yes, it is. And it is hard. And I can tell you too, all of us can say that. When we turned our life and will over to the care of God, we know, we've all experienced it. A lot of times it got harder. Amen? When we were really doing it. Sometimes when we did the half measures, or like the sailors, we tried to row harder. Because we were in control, we were able to create the result we wanted. And it worked out. But then we got right back to desperation. So right now the question is for you. And for whatever reason you're working this program, if you're working it, I'm working it for people pleasing. The desperate need for affirmation from people, and the achievement I use to get that. I'm working this program. So the question for myself, the question for you this week: will you be done with the half measures? Will you truly turn your life and will over to the care of Christ, that higher power who is the highest, so that the wind may take your vessel wherever it may go? And when it gets hard, when you confront your enemies, your demons, will you stay the course? I hope you will. It's worth it. Thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for braving the blizzard. I know it's just like that blizzard from the 70s out there today. Yeah. Hey, next week, steps 4 and 5. If you want to Google them to get ready, you can. Look up. You can see these steps on AA's website. We're going to be in steps 4 and 5. Talk about confronting your demons. Whoa, baby. Steps 4 and 5 got you doing that, don't they, Caleb? Caleb's going to be sharing about steps 4 and 5 with us. And we're going to keep going with this series, Jesus in the 12 Steps. I want to say it one more time before we go. If you know anybody who needs help in recovery, we're here for them. Refer them to me, refer them to our group. We want to be here to help. That's why we exist. So come back.